Hey guys, so we're back with another video. Welcome back. So this is going to be my part 3 video. Now this is going to be called the Adonaeus Exodia theory. Now the reason why I'm bringing Yu-Gi-Oh into this is due to the fact that think of the Soul King's parts as some sort of Exodia parts. So we know where the left hand and the right hand of the Soul King, where it belongs and where it fell down to. The second thing is we know the heart of the Soul King, how it was gathered or located, that we don't know about. There are two more missing pieces of the Soul King that are very prominent, I would say. We haven't got full information about it, and also the symbols that is on the tapestry. I'm getting more and more detail that that tapestry makes up the symbol of the Soul King himself. We know that the Soul King parts were kind of like in chains, because if we look at examples from Pernita, we saw that Pernita was kind of like in chains, and that even though the Soul King is in a hybrid position, which is a life and death situation, he could still see things that are happening around him, such as the past, the present, and the future. Or he could also change the future if he has to, by influencing those that are in his vicinity. And I think the Almighty plays a very big role of what the Soul King could do. Not the Almighty that Yuhabak has, but the first primary Almighty, which belongs to Adonaeus. Now we also know that when the world of the living and Wiccamundo and the Soul Society was created, the hell realm always existed, and that, you know, there was a lot of questions from the club outside that indicated that there are different realms that Shimigamis and humans and hollows cannot cross, and where the nobles, where they lie, we don't know that much about that. But on top of that, I feel as if we're getting closer and closer to the history of the Soul King. We got a lot of backstory from the core 2 and 3, and we even got a larger flashback of what it meant that Yuhabak kind of like brainwashed, or he was like reincarnated in so many times when the Soul King recreated the 3 worlds. So in a weird way, it seems like he did not remember who his father was. Almost like he was put into an identity spell. Now we know that the Soul King also influenced Ichibei to oversee a lot of things, and the noble families entrusted Ichibei to protect the Soul King and his stability of holding the 3 realms. Also, the Soul King fragments parts to create the Oken, which is the bones of Squad Zero. And I mentioned this before in my previous video that Pernita actually enhanced or helped Ichibei create those appendages, the different large arms and legs that Ichibei used to fight Yuhabak. We even saw that in Core 2 when he was fighting against Yuhabak, that he was influenced or created different parts of himself to I would say create different parts to fight. We know that Ichimonji Shirafude is the first Bankai, or the first transcendent form that is now a representation of a Bankai. It has a white and black properties, which almost as a calligraphy brush, he's able to create and destroy and give it new name if he has to. His strongest abilities, as we mentioned when we were covering each Squad Zero member, the Sentai's Fu Sindo, which is the big mausoleum that looks like a soot, was able to pull the thousands of darkness from futures and bring it to the present. And I think this ability has an effect. And the effect, even though we didn't see it, I think it affects things in the long run, which would connect to what the story of Forever With You novels, indicating that there were remains of Yuhabak in certain places, and that maybe this could be done due to the influence of the royal guards. I think that would make perfect sense. And going back to what I was saying before, with a fight between the left hand and the right hand of the Soul King, and I mentioned that those parts, especially Mimi Hage was probably the first part of the Soul King that fell down way before Pernita. And Pernita was merged as a continuity plan to stop Yuhabak. And Yuhabak ended up merging with Pernita instead, thus creating the first evolution of the modern Quincy's that we know it now, which is the Volt Standish. Because Uryu focused on the old practices, which is the practices of like the Stridder, or some of the Quincy attack by his uncle. But the Volt Standish is a property, I think, that was evolved due to the influence of Pernita. Now, Pernita versus Mimi Hage, that is a very interesting fight. I mentioned that before now, that I think the person that would take the cake would probably be Mimi Hage, because anything that could stop progress, which, you know, the whole gig of Pernita is to progress things more in the future. But if something's stagnated and doesn't allow it to grow, that is basically meaning that this technique or this ability that Mimi Hage has is able to stop any evolution or progression. Now, out of the two, which one is more powerful? I would definitely say it would be Pernita, because Pernita was able to absorb or adapt to a Kenpachi that just beat one of the strongest Stern Ridders, which was Grimmy. And Grimmy was so strong that his ability, the imaginary, was able to defect a lot of things that Kenpachi did. So with the power of evolution and stalemate, we saw that the modern forms of those two parts of the Soul King evolve very drastically and very differently. One allows himself to be considered a Quincy, whereas the other one allowed himself to be a Shimigami, because when it fell down, it kind of like embraced the Shimigami lifestyle, and it even partnered itself by the worshipping ability of the people in the district area. He was able to give life, or give somewhat progression towards Ukitake's life by, you know, stopping the illness. But in return, Ukitake had to pay that back with his life when it was needed for the Soul King to be saved. We could say the same thing about Pernita. Pernita also sacrificed itself in order for the Quincy King to be resurrected much earlier. When the Grand Fisher incident happened, when Ichigo mom died, we saw that they mentioned in the poem of the chant that, you know, the Quincy King regained all these things. But I think while he was regaining these things, he kind of evolved the modern look of the Quincy's to like the Volt Standish, the new form that they have. I think it, like I mentioned before in my previous thing, I feel as if it was due to the progression of Pernita, and that Pernita's ghostly form was merged with Yuhabak. And I think when Yuhabak finished, I would say, resurrecting himself or bringing himself back, he was able to detach from Pernita and gave it a form and a property. Because the fact that Ichibei merged with Pernita at first, he was much stronger until, well, he was stronger, but as people kept leaving and merging with the different parts of the Soul King, I think the power of the Soul King kind of like got diluted. You know, if the character of the person is strong, like the host, then Pernita's ability will be more in effect. And I think that's how it works. So come to find out even further, I like to mention that, like I said, going back to the Exodia theory, I feel as if we haven't got the full effect of what Mimi Hage could do. So planning to see what Core 4 is gonna do with the remainder parts, and how Ukitake will play a bigger role, indicating that Mimihage will still be in a position to help out. And like I mentioned, the Hell Arc or the Hell Core, I think we'll be focusing around the Rio's. I think Rio's, like each time his body is sent to like hell, I think it's almost like regrouping his body. And I can't wait to see what they're gonna do. So let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys for part 4.